Today you will learn:
become an award-winning sleeper. That's right, we can't be our best without rest.
create a group of people who can be your go-to, your personal board of directors, your people who help you professionally and personally.
When asking for feedback, ask for one thing that people took away from today. Ask for one thing that you should start doing, one thing you should stop doing, and one thing you should continue doing.
When setting a meeting, ask, do I even need it? Can it be shorter? Let's break out of the 1-hour meeting mold.
The power of the pause is the wonderful, deliberate practice of saying yes selectively. Ask, can you tell me more before you say yes or no?
Welcome to EM Pulse, bringing research and expert opinion to the bedside.
We're your hosts, Sarah Medeiros
And Julia Magana.
Welcome back to EM Pulse.
You know, Sarah, some of our most popular podcasts are those that address wellness and life skills.
Yeah, and I think that reflects that we have a hard job, and we are all looking for tips on being better versions of ourselves.
I recently listened to the book Micro Skills. It's a book written by emergency medicine physicians who want to help us all be the best versions of ourselves. And in typical emergency medicine fashion, they gave a very practical outline on how to do it, interspersed with stories. I was particularly struck by the opening promise. If you read this book on a Friday, we promise you will be better at your job on Monday. It is geared towards early career professionals, but I certainly learned a ton myself. And so we invited the author to come and tell us more.
Yeah, so Dr. Resa Lewiss is an emergency medicine and lifestyle medicine physician. She's an innovator, TEDMED speaker, and author of Micro Skills, together with her co-author, Dr. Adaira Landry. So welcome, Resa.
Thanks so much for the invitation. I am so glad to be with both of you.
Okay, Resa, I encouraged everyone to read the book, but for those of you who have not read Micro Skills, what actually are micro skills? What do you mean by that term?
Thanks for the compliment. And a very important question, what is a micro skill? So it's a little bit like how it sounds. Micro skills are small behaviors, small steps. These are building blocks to achieve big goals, overwhelming projects, and even habits that you think some people have and some people don't. We really believe that almost everything can be broken down into these small actionable steps to then achieve these bigger goals.
So Resa, why did you write this book? Why is this topic important to you?
It's a great question. And I won't take you through the long how Resa became a writer journey, but briefly, I started with academic writing. I'm very, very deeply brainwashed academic. So publications in medical and scientific journals are different than writing for mainstream audiences. And right before and amidst the pandemic, I started writing articles in mainstream outlets. Those articles became the proof of concept for this book. And many of those articles I wrote with my co-author, and they were about navigating the workplace because although we have very different experiences, we have a lot of overlapping stories where somehow we looked around and other people at work seemed to know how to navigate, seemed to know how to get things done, seemed very efficient. And I always felt, I'll make a sports reference here, that somehow I did not get a copy of the workplace playbook. And I didn't know why, I didn't know how. I thought maybe because no one in my family is a physician. Maybe it's because I'm a woman. I don't know. But I did well. I am ambitious and I worked hard and I achieved. But I do think it could have been easier. It could have been more efficient. It could have been kinder of an experience if I had been told about some of these workplace micro skills.
I like that. And it really is a playbook. There's no doubt about that. I recently read that burnout peaks during training and mid-career. So let's kind of take this career phase by career phase. What is your best or favorite micro skill for early career physicians?
First, I'll say I love the construct of, sort of stages and chunking it up. So absolutely, as you noted, the book basically speaks more to people that are entering the workplace, maybe like ready for college, ready for fellowship, ready for the first job, early career. But there's sprinkles that definitely make it speak to mid-career and late career. I'll start with that chunk that you asked about. Our chapter 1 is micro skills for self-care, specifically because, and I'm speaking to you emergency medicine physicians and emergency medicine professional team members, our workplace does not teach us how to take care of ourselves. It doesn't model it. It doesn't loud it. And I want to use that word right there, loud. And it just sort of somehow doesn't seem to highly reward taking care of yourself. And for example, sleep. It used to be this badge of honor to show that you didn't have to sleep and that you could work an overnight shift and then do a full day of meetings. I've shared that after an overnight shift, I would hope that in driving home, I wouldn't hit any stop signs or any red lights, not literally hit, but I would not have to stop at a stop sign or stop at a red light because I was concerned about nodding off to sleep. Or funny, not funny, when I worked in New York City and took the subway, I would not sit down because if I sat down, I might fall asleep and wake up in Queens and miss my stop to get off in Manhattan. So that chapter 1, micro skills for self-care, is all about how the more we take care of ourselves, the better we are in terms of our professional journey and showing up to work. That includes sleep. That includes financial health, taking care of your finances. That means emotional and psychological health. That means having people on your personal board of directors, people that can help you out along the way. So early career, micro skills for self-care.
I like that. It sounds so stupid just to say it out loud that
right.
You should get some sleep and you should
Right.
take care of yourself. But I mean, it is, as you say, it's a badge of honor. And I think in your book, what is it that you say, Resa, about sleep? Be an award-winning sleeper. Is that the phrase that you use?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really resonated with that because I have prided myself on being an award-winning low sleeper. And so flipping that script was a really interesting thing for me. But I do think it's one of the most high yield things that we can do to help ourselves be a better version of ourselves.
But all of that self-care, I think, is stuff that gets overlooked. And it took me years to figure out that, I really do need to prioritize that. And it really makes everything run so much smoother if I do. But I don't know why that was so hard to grasp. Okay, so let's move on to our mid-career physicians. What are your tips there?
So I'm going to highlight the chapter on navigating conflict and being a good team player. So, you're shaking your head, I'm shaking my head. Everybody listening can agree, those are skills that we need to no matter what the stage. But I think when we're mid-career, we actually have some confidence, we have some competence, and we're often in leadership positions that we can actually figure out how to help others on our team navigate conflict. We're often navigating conflict, and also we're in positions to be a much more present team player. And I bring this up because I wrote a piece about navigating toxic colleagues. In fact, I termed it a paper tiger colleague. And a paper tiger colleague is someone who seems like they have a lot of power and even supervisory role over you, but they really don't when you find out. And this came from a real workplace story, actually a series of stories that I experienced. And I broke it down into small micro skills about how to navigate that type of challenging workplace colleague. And so the first is go to your personal board of directors. And just to define personal board of directors, these are your go-to people. And in the book, we have a diagram of people sitting around a round table because they're all interacting with each other and you are the center of this table. And there's always an open chair so people can come on your board and roll off your board. And to be clear, this is not literally a board with term limits or anything like this, but these are your people that are your go-to people for your professional career. You can ask them questions. They want you to succeed. So when you're in the workplace, navigating a toxic, difficult paper tiger colleague, speak to your personal board. Either run the situation by them, practice a difficult conversation if you're going to end up having a conversation with this person. Next, ask for an org chart. An org chart is an organizational chart. We may not even be aware that there is such a thing in our workplace, but there is. And sometimes it's visible and on a website, and sometimes it's sort of not updated, but it's available. But I think it's important to know who are your supervisors? Who's a direct report? Who's an indirect report? Where's there a solid line? Where's there a dotted line? And where is there no line? In my specific situation, the person with whom I was having the conflict, there was actually no reporting structure, but the person was trying to get me by email and by an in-person meeting to report to them. It was very, very bizarre. I'll just give one more micro skill when navigating this type of colleague is, find out the places where you can bring concerns, whether it's HR, whether it's an office of professionalism, whether it's your supervisor. And so, there are many things in the book that we break down of these actionable behaviors, these small steps you can take to deal with something that's larger and overwhelming.
Resa, can I ask just as a follow-up, how do you identify if that individual is a paper tiger? You know what I mean? How do you know when it's real and when it's a paper tiger?
So I think it's scenario specific. First of all, I'm a big believer of always trust your gut. So my spidey sense and my gut went off. The scenario was this. I joined a new institution. And as you shared, I'm an emergency physician, and within emergency medicine, I'm a medical educator, and I focused a lot of time on ultrasound, the use of ultrasound at the bedside. So I joined the institution, and very soon after joining, I received an email from someone, I didn't know this person, didn't recognize the name, who asked me if I would assist with a medical education project. And we're all helpers, and we're all told to say yes, and, good citizenship, plus new institution. So I said, yes, that I'd be glad to help. And the next thing I knew, the whole tone of the email and the interactions changed. And the person kept emailing and wanting me to report in and follow up, and had I completed certain tasks. And I was just really surprised. So I actually asked for an in-person meeting, same sort of energy and demeanor of speaking sort of down to me and expecting that I would report to this person. And I was just I don't know that I really have any reporting to this person. So I actually went to someone to whom I knew I really did report, a supervisor. I explained the scenario. And lo and behold, when you're experiencing something like this at work, generally, you're not the first person. This is generally repeat behavior. Again, you're shaking your heads. One of the important aspects of the stories in this book is most people can relate. Because these are not isolated women stories. These are not isolated emergency medicine stories. These aren't even isolated medicine stories, because this is a business and leadership book. It just so happens that the authors are women and are emergency physicians. But this concept of the colleague and the paper tiger colleague, a lot of people are oh my gosh, I've had that. Back to the story. The supervisor said to me, yes, you have no reporting to this person. You can stop interacting. In fact, don't respond to those emails. I will take care of it. And the supervisor, I don't know what happened exactly, but the emails and the expectations stopped. And actually, soon thereafter, this colleague was no longer working at the institution.
Wow, interesting. I struggled with this early in my career, and I had a few situations where I was wait, who is this person? Why are they asking me that? And I think that key piece of going and find somebody else who might know that's more senior is a really helpful way to identify who they are. If you're wondering what is my obligation to them, then just ask somebody. Yeah. And for those of us mid and late career, just watch out for your younger people and point it out to them when there are good spots to say no.
And as that earlier career physician as well, I think part of it is, getting through your own imposter syndrome, because I think sometimes we don't even ask that question or recognize that maybe that this could be a situation where I don't have to report to this person. So even just asking those questions, asking your senior physicians, your leadership, I think that's really important.
I really like what you two both shared and highlighted, because early on, whether you're early on in terms of age, but even I was brand new at this institution. So even though I was not early age or early stage, I still wanted to be careful. And I didn't know who was safe to speak with. And that's another micro skill regarding managing and challenging and navigating conflict is, avoiding gossip and inquiring carefully. So yeah, a lot of practical stuff.
For sure.
Okay, so let's move on to that next stage, that late career physician. What kind of advice do you have here?
So I'm going to highlight again that even the micro skills for self-care are important for the late stage physician. Embracing sleep, because, our sleep needs change as we age. But to get more specific, the things that really have been reflected back to me by elder career physicians and elder care healthcare professionals is like, wow, I didn't think I was going to learn anything, and I learned a lot. So one is about email communication. We all think we're super good and we're super polished communicators. Well, we're emergency docs, or we work in the emergency department. We're used to teams and team behavior and emailing. It turns out there are a lot of things about our emailing behaviors that are not fantastic. And one quick one is about sending emails so they only arrive in people's inbox during work hours, meaning Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 or 9 to 6. But whatever your team or whatever the workplace culture sort of suggests are sort of healthy hours. The reason being, even though we may work 24/7, weekends, holidays as emergency docs, the world doesn't. And it is really important. Part of our psychological safety, part of our deliberate rest is to be off when we're truly off. And that means not receiving emails into our inbox. So if you're sending an email, you should, sure, go ahead and write it, but schedule it so it arrives. And if people are like, well, but it's really important. Well, arguably, if it's that important, then maybe email's not the right medium. Maybe you should text them. Maybe you should call them. So that's one example. Another one that I'll give is talking about, if you're more senior, usually more senior people are in leadership positions. And I do think it is our responsibility to look out for team players. Creating psychological safety. One example, if there's sort of a inappropriate joke, not allowing those inappropriate jokes, or when an inappropriate joke is told, figuring out something, some way, some phrase so that you can be an upstander and not a bystander. And we even give in the book, we try to make it very practical. We even have some charts of some things you can say like, hey, I didn't think that was funny. Or can you repeat that? Or I don't understand the joke. Can you explain it to me? And sort of having your own phrases, if you're in that position, to be able to speak up in the moment if something, again, in this case, a joke is told that just is inappropriate or unprofessional or might make team members uncomfortable.
Okay, that seems like a good spot to stop. We have a lot more on how to have a thriving emergency medicine career from Dr. Resa Lewiss.
Thank you to our department for creating a place where we can implement some of these ideas.
And thank you to OM Productions for already doing a lot of these things.
In the meantime, stay curious, stay inspired, and stay tuned.
The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of UC Davis Department of Emergency Medicine, UC Davis Health, or their parent organizations.